to the Wandering Dotterill. As the number of pariahs grow, the number of toxic relationships grow, intimate partner abuse happens, and we don't know about it. And the things that happen behind closed doors, we remember the names Gabby Petito, Micah Miller, Ann Kingston, Rachel Jeffs, and Rebecca Wall. Along with those names are new victims that come out all the time in the SBC, the Southern Baptist Convention, those 700 new victims. In the Catholic Church, 4,392 victims so far. In the LDS Church, 91 new cases. We have to stop and think about these individuals and what it means for things to be shifted and swept under the rug when it comes to toxic cycles and abuse in families, and in those families where they hold specific religious beliefs that are damaging. Legalistic abuse and spiritual abuse happen in churches. It happens in a home that has become religious. We're not talking about faith. We're talking about legalism. We're talking about forcing a way of thinking onto someone else that's not filled with love, that's not filled with compassion. It's filled with violence. It's not structure. It's rigid compartmentalization of an individual to control them, because God is a God of anger, not a God of love, which that's what I thought for many years. Unfortunately, this has become a full-blown problem in Western culture. And I, for one, know what it feels like to be told by a pastor, because my dad is a pastor, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. If you sit at the table and read your Bible by yourself and memorize that scripture, when we test you, when I test you, when me and my wife lurk over your shoulder and make sure you're reading that word and you can memorize it, then you can do something else. It was so unloving and so unkind. And I was in shock all the time. I was being forced to believe in my Bible, which I don't need someone to force me to do that. I've had my own spiritual awakening. We're not talking about wokeism. I'm talking about my own personal relationship with Jesus, and that's between me and him. He yanked me out of the toxic foothold that was in my life, the stronghold of the enemy. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about victims that are never mentioned because people are scared to talk about the underlying problem. And the problem is hurt people hurt people. Toxic people create toxicity. A toxic environment is not conducive of love. It's not conducive of listening to someone's story and having compassion on them. It's mockery and a substitute for faith. It's a substitute for the compassion that Jesus showed his disciples, because they weren't perfect and they all left their families to learn from him and follow him with devastating outcomes. But what we're talking about is the toxic cycle and the toxic environment that legalistic viewpoints have created. Not only was my mother a Roman Catholic, my father became a Southern Baptist pastor. Then there were those around me when I was growing up that were Mormons, LDS. My mother married a man that was an LDS bigamist. He had 8 wives.
What?
And used his toxicity to control her.
Huh?
And it was horrible. The outcome was horrible. My mother would have a screaming fit and start cussing and throwing a fit if I ever brought up Jesus, if I brought up the Bible, if I said, Mom, let's go to church. She would freak out on me and drink all day until the night, and then the next day blame me for bringing it up. And then there was my stepfather, a 33rd degree Mason, who had his strong beliefs in the Masonic Temple, which was quite scary because he was a predator. He was not a good individual to me, but I looked up to him because he was smart and educated and a military individual. Like I said before, everyone in my family had some contact or some job in the military. And being raised that way, it's quite rigid, quite unstructured, quite controlling, and kind of scary. The first chance we got to break free, we took it. Before I turned 6, me and my sibling discovered if we left the house on the weekend, we could avoid some of the structured narcissism, the control of the environment, the harassment of abuse, of toxicity. So we would walk down to the high school where my sibling would make out with their partner to smoke marijuana, but I was just a little kid. I didn't really know what was going on. And then we would proceed to walk across a busy road and go to Sunday school. And it soon turned into me begging the youth pastor / music director to come to my house and bring Jesus home.
What?
Because I thought Jesus was alive to come to my house and that he would come and save my dad.
Huh?
Because my dad was an alcoholic. He was violent, abusive, aggressive, controlling. And there was this new mother in the mix of things that we didn't know anything about. We didn't really know her enough to not like her or to like her. We didn't know anything about the person. We just knew that we had to leave because there were things going on that were inappropriate. There were predators around and people doing things they shouldn't be doing. And so I begged this youth pastor to come to my home and bring my dad to Christ, which I did. And in the interim, he found salvation. However, he became a dry drunk and was abusive and was controlling and narcissistic and toxic and irrational. And around that same time, him having his awakening, a cat had given birth on our side porch of our trailer. And I found the kittens and said, "Can I take care of these kittens? Let me nurse them." And any 5 to 6-year-old little girl would want a baby kitten, would want a brand new kitten. And it was freezing cold outside. And he said, "Nope, we can't do that. We're not keeping those cats." And he said, "I'll give them a water bottle." But it was below zero. It was probably 10 degrees in the evening and 10 below at night. And the kittens froze overnight. And I will never forget how shocked I was, because that's when I started to understand that there was animal abuse going on around me, because there was more instances of this type of toxic behavior. It was just not okay.
What?
And then there was the association to the church, and other individuals that were in the church were also toxic and also predators and doing things they shouldn't with little kids. This is your host, the Dingy Dotterel. There's a hard reality surrounding toxic cycles and being raised in a traumatic environment. Like I said before, toxic people create toxicity. Hurt people hurt people. And when you reach out for help, there is no definitive answer for the outcome. There's no written manual on how to combat a toxic cycle. Yes, there are agencies that will see you through. There are legal ramifications to being in intimate partner violent situations. And then there are situations to where they expect you to learn from what you've done, and I'm speaking from an administration viewpoint, that being ostracized happens, being cut off happens, being spoken to in a downward manner from individuals who hold office in a community where they say, your situation is not that serious. You're taking this out of context. This person is not toxic. This person is not narcissistic. They're not abusing you.
No.
You're the one that's causing the problem. And the seriousness behind that is how many women actually fall through the cracks because of people's ignorance, people's intimidating behavior, because they're educated and we're not. Because we're the ones that are being abused. And poor us, because we have a black eye, or because someone might have done something to harm you. Poor you. Poor you. It's very disorientating to an individual who's been harmed in a toxic relationship or has been traumatized as a child, and they grow up with people around them saying, you're to blame, it's your fault. So it's a cold hard fact, people, that once you learn that you're trying to break free from toxic cycles, people don't understand you, and they never will. And they don't want to, because it's a gray area. They think because you're in this situation, there's some part of this that is your blame. Some part of this is your problem, and no one will ever be able to help you. And I'm not saying you need to get over it, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't seek help. What I'm saying is you need to pick yourself up, and you need to say, hey, there's going to come a time when someone comes at me and says, this is your fault. There's going to be someone that says, because you did this, they did that to you. Take, for instance, I had an individual who was holding a public office, and something terrible happened. And I brought it to their attention, and they said, you're overreacting. There will be no charges brought. And the individual was held unaccountable. The individual was held harmless for their behavior.
What?
And they continue to do horrible things to other people.
No.
And that's what happens in society. People won't believe you. People will talk down to you. People will say, because you're uneducated. There's like this upper hand movement going on in our society, especially with authority figures, that say, I have authority, I'm in control, and I know the outcome. And that's what I've been talking about this whole podcast, is being raised around this environment that stigmatizes people who have been traumatized. And it doesn't matter what background you have. If you're a teacher, if you're in the military, if you are an elder care provider, if you do yard work for a living, and you're in a narcissistic abusive relationship, I'm saying seek help. But I'm also saying there's going to be those fighters against your right to seek help. They will ostracize you, they will scapegoat you, and they will take advantage of the situation to please themselves. And there are those of us who carry professional licenses that wonder what happened to people's compassion. The point I'm making is there are no hard and fast rules to becoming healthy when you've learned from toxicity how to be toxic. When you've learned from other individuals how to be narcissistic, how we desire to control the outcome of the situation, either by going back over and over again, which is a bad idea. Statistically, it's just a horrible idea to go back to an abuser. But I've done it over and over my whole life. In different relationships, I chose the same person over and over again. But there comes a time when you have a realization, that aha moment, that moment when you realize when you've blown the whistle on an abuser or a toxic situation, a toxic environment, a legalistic idea or a legalistic movement where you think, oh, something's going to happen because this happened to me. And that's just not the case. Take, for instance, when I called to report some abuse that had happened to me when I was a child, which happened within the strictures of a church environment. These were individuals that were churched. These were individuals that were attending the church. These were individuals attending the same church as me. And when it was brought to the attention of someone, I thought, 1, they were in authority. 2, they were the same gender as myself. 3, they were a department head of a facility that was conducively leaning toward the welfare of women. I thought by calling this person and alerting them to the situation that they would be compassionate toward me. Boy, was I wrong. Not only did they laugh at me, they mocked me, they placated me. And when they thought that they had hung up the telephone to end the conversation, I didn't hang up. For whatever reason, I did not hang up that day. Because I was in shock.
What?
And the line was open, and the other individual had not hung up the phone. And they were speaking to someone else, and they were mocking me and laughing at me and making light of the situation. And they informed me before they hung up with me that I needed to call someone else. And to me, it was just so belittling. It downplayed my trauma, which was real. So I'm saying, be prepared. If you're listening and you've gone through a situation or you've returned to an abuser in your life, take it from someone who knows. You got to pick yourself up. You got to be prepared for the worst. You have to pick yourself up. You have to be prepared for the worst. And what I mean by that is you have to be prepared for people's reactions to you standing your ground and wanting to change your direction in life. Especially if all you've been around is toxicity. People that want to abuse you, people that want to take advantage of you. When you stop and say, no more, I won't do this anymore, I'm not going to do this anymore, there will be those that don't agree. There will be those that will try to fight you, that will try to argue with you, try to placate you, try to downplay the situation, try to make you stay gullible long enough for their own sick pleasure. The reality is that what happens in the dark will come to light. And the longer you stay in the dark, you won't see the light. You can't see the light. Especially if you're swimming in toxicity. And a lot of people I know are. A lot of people I've been associated with over the years are. They're stuck in toxic cycles. And they don't even realize it. They're blind to what's going on around them. They're blind to their sarcasm. They're blind to their cold-hearted, condescending, controlling behavior. And it dawned on me several years ago, why are people so rude? Why are people so pushy? Why are people not right? Was it something that their parents did? Was it because of the way I was raised? Maybe I see it this way. I tried not to raise my kids that way. I tried to be fair and compassionate, even though it was hard because I didn't know any of that. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know how to be creating. I didn't know how to create an environment that was conducive of love. So I tried my best. But what I'm saying is other people that are in authority figures, they really could care less. Especially when you file papers and you have to go to court or you have to go to the legal team and say, this is what's happened. I'm going to press charges. And they'll say, why'd you do it? Why'd you go back? How come you allowed this to happen? Blah, 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 blah. And that's when people lose their lives. Those statistics are real. I've lost several people in my family because they did not beat the odds, and they were women. They were women, and then there were those men also, the men in my family. I can give many examples, but I won't because it's horrible. I'm just saying I have examples of both men and women that stay in abusive relationships with narcissistically controlling people, toxic environments that are not loving or caring, and the people are being used for their money, for their cash app, for their daily needs when they can go get a job and they can take care of themselves. They can wipe their own butt. They're big now. They're a big boy and a big girl now, but they act like little tiny kids because they've grown up around toxicity and they take it out on everybody else. Welcome to the Wandering Dotterel.